This is the presentation for topic 3, traditional lump sum contracts. And surprisingly enough, you've got to topic 3. You've got past topic 1 and 2. And this is a part of building contract administration, this core subject for this semester. This particular topic is looking at traditional lump sum contracts, but more in the view that when they might not work, and factors to consider when selecting the appropriate form of contract, and what that type of documentation that surrounds it draws us to traditional, or might make us reconsider other forms of contract. I might also bring your attention to the fact that these presentations are additional to the study guide. They are no way a replacement. They can't replace the study guide. The study guide's got additional information in the form of diagrams. There's working problems for you to work through, and the workbook activities as well. So look at this as a summary only, and when you're finished with it, go back to the study guide, read through those sections and attempt those workbook questions. Let's hit it. Let's now consider factors in contract selection. I've identified 5 areas there, which they're the main areas that you need to consider once you start asking the questions. But the questions really are going to be looking at those things like the complexity of the project, and that's not just whether it's an alteration or new work, but looking at whether there's existing activities involved, whether there's existing rail, roads, shopping, public traffic, deliveries, what it might be that can't be interrupted no matter what's happening during the delivery program. The magnitude of the project, what size is this thing? Does it fit on a domestic block of land, or is it over several hectares? And with that magnitude, then the time scale will fit with that there as well. Things like the administration of it. Who's going to approach that, and how's that going to be supervised? Is there enough detail in the documentation, and not just detail as into better scope and plan the work, but also provide a bill of quantities? So both forms of documentation there provide us with some type of surety, not just on the scoping and pricing initially, but the planning of the project on the way through, and then also the end point, the final account, the final end date, planning towards that, and being able to make some type of educated and informed judgment of what that final project time and cost will be. Let's now consider the advantages of traditional forms of contract. Really, it's definitely a proven model. Traditional forms of contract have been around for a very long time, and and by saying that, it's very clear that there's plenty of templates for contract administration of this form of contract. There's a lot of experience in people in the industry that have used this form of contract delivery as well. So as a result, it's well understood in law. And so there's plenty of understanding for both parties, both the client and the builder. I think the four issues, points that I've made there on the slide, they really they become important in the sense that predetermined nature of the scope of the works that actually harnesses all of it. Once that nature of works and the scope of works is defined, it makes it easier to administer from day one. It makes it easier to cost control. It makes it easier to cost forecast. It makes it easier to plan and to plan and to work towards a final and target end date as well. So that's the real advantages of traditional forms of contract. Now let's consider projects where traditional forms of contract delivery might be difficult, and these really apply themselves where there's commercial opportunities or a lot of disruption involved in the project in a large scale. These might be large tunnels, major infrastructure projects, and I say commercial where you might have a number of retail outlets wanting to open at a certain time, or maybe a large retail mall situation that needs to be open and operating at a specific time. And those time issues are very important, because there's a lot of holding costs the costs that need to be paid in financing before there's actual retail income. And it's not always retail. The lead time of the works and the long lead time in designing and documenting can often exacerbate the problem. So if they're large scale infrastructure projects, that can actually be further exacerbated by more traffic congestion getting worse. Or if we look at the extreme situation, even people continually being turned away from a hospital and those numbers actually increasing. So that's where traditional often doesn't work as well as what it could. So the alternative form of contract delivery we need to consider then is design and construct. We spoke about this in topic 2. So there's plenty of advantages for this style of contract delivery in larger projects or projects that need a more speedy delivery and a defined end date. The difficulty with this type of project, more often than not, is that because it's not well defined and scoped at the beginning of it, and the builder takes a bigger role in the time, in process of variations and payments and defects, is that the end result is not always the quality that the client expected, and so that's possibly a trade-off or a negative with this form of contract delivery. But commercially, and for those larger projects that need a speedy delivery, this is often the alternative to traditional forms of contract. So moving on to contract documentation, again, it's an appropriate time for us to again reconsider the issues of and the framework of the project we're looking at, which is timing, economy, resources, location, nature of the project, and those issues alone help us frame the type of contract documents and the detail of the documentation that we'll need to carry the building project forward as well. Now, the contract documents themselves, I stressed earlier that it's really the success of the contract and the contract running smoothly from an administration point of view is really hinged on the quality of the contract documentation in place. And then regardless of the quality of the contract documents, it's then the ability to effectively contract administer those and communicate the requirements and agree on those requirements, and where the contract actually needs further reinforcing throughout the project progress. So again, I've identified them here as the general conditions of contract, the special conditions of contract, which are those annexures to the contract, which would be time constraints, access constraints, those type of things. A specification, which draws our attention to the appropriate Australian standards, laws, quality issues, and those type of things which are particular to the building. The drawings, which will bind the specification together with the drawings and further communicate what's actually required to be built and how it should be built, and then specified bills of quantities, not always consideration, but in those projects which are traditional lump sum or and require a schedule or rate or a specified bill of quantities, the specified bill then becomes a contract document as well. It's also an important part of contract administration to ensure that all the insurances and securities are correct and in place. And that's important in case there's the project's damaged by fire or flooded and destroyed during the process of the construction. There's an obligation for the builder to reinstate that, and that would cause some serious financial risk, both for the to rebuild and also to the commercial interest of the client at the end of the project. So often insurances, these type of insurances are linked to builders' licenses, but it's important to ensure that they're in place, they're adequate amounts, and that they are current as well. Public liability also, covering the injury and the possibility of a workplace member being or someone walking onto a site, being onto a site And remember, the builder has sole possession of the building site, so making sure that there's adequate cover there for public liability. The same again with workers' compensation, that the builder, all employees of the builders, that they would have a right to claim up the hierarchical tree if there's no workers' compensation or some other form of income protection insurance. So all of these are important, and a part of the contract administration process is ensuring that there's evidence of these insurances in place, the certificate of currency is in place, the trading names are correct, they're valid and current, it's in the correct names or the joint names that are required, there's adequate cover, and there's any other provisos in the policies. That's something that I always find interesting. If there's something unique to the project, then the insurance policies have to reflect these on it. And also whether it's reinstatement or replacement. These type of issues as well are very important. Okay, it's now time to look back and review topic 3, read through the study guide, and also refer to course text or any other textbooks related to the subject. And with that, then work through those workbook activities for the assignment 4 workbook at the end of the semester hand-in. If you've got any questions, you can post them to the student forum, or otherwise email me directly.